Let's talk about network security groups in Azure, folks. What I've got here is a basic architectural diagram, and this will help me be able to build out the infrastructure that I need to demonstrate the network security group functionality to yourselves. What I would say is it's always good practice once you start working with a larger number of resources and configuration settings to work off architectural diagrams, folks, and settings that you have. In this case, I've got network security group configuration rule settings here, and if I forget what I'm putting into the portal as I'm clicking around or I'm building this out in infrastructure as code, then you can kind of lose track if you haven't got something like this to refer back to. And when things start to go wrong, at least it might help you fault find if something has gone wrong, folks. Okay, so from the top down, I've got my workstation, which I'm on now, my IP address, and I'm connecting to virtual machine 1 in subnet 1 here, folks. What we've got is I'm coming through the internet. I'm coming in through the Microsoft global network infrastructure that includes all the data centers and regions around the world. In this case, I've got a virtual network span up in one of the data centers in the Australia East region. Okay, and in that virtual network, folks, I've got 3 subnets and I've got 3 virtual machines built inside each subnet accordingly. The 3 virtual machines have all got private IPs. The first one's got the public IP, which is going to allow me to connect to that via RDP, remote desktop protocol, in port 3389, and I can then, folks, connect to all these other virtual machines based on the rules that are in the network security groups. The CIDR ranges of the virtual network and the subnets are here. Going into that, folks, is beyond the scope of the tutorial, but it's good practice just to be able to understand what you've got available to you in your virtual network and subnet ranges accordingly. Okay, so just to explain these icons, folks, these are network security group icons. The smaller ones, whilst I'm going through the tutorial, I'm going to drag in, and in this case on the left, subnet network security group. I'll attach it to a subnet just to help you better understand where this list of rules are attached to and how it prevents the traffic, which in this case is myself trying to connect to that virtual machine 1 coming in. And the one on the right, virtual machine network security group, folks, I'll be able to drag that small one in and put it onto the virtual machine 1, and you will see then in this case it's got a deny rule on it. So you will see how that works, folks, okay, as we progress through. Okay, let's dive in. So first off, we've got a VNet here, folks, like we spoke about in the architectural diagram. You've got the CIDR range there. Within the VNet, we've got 3 subnets, again, CIDR ranges. And you can see here, there are no security groups attached to these subnets, folks. Then we've got the actual security group that we can attach. We spoke about it, subnet network security group. And we've got the rule sets in there accordingly. Okay, then we've got our virtual machines 1, 2, and 3, and they're in subnet 1, 2, and 3 accordingly. You can see the public IP address attached to virtual machine 1 here, folks, and the other 2 have only got the private IP with no public IPs. The actual network security groups for the VMs are attached to the NIC cards, folks, the network interface cards. And in this case, you can see them here. And that's where the network security group would be attached, folks. So in this case, we haven't got any attached, so there's none listed. Okay, but we will see that there when we go through the tutorial. As we attach them, they will appear here. Okay. What we've got here is the public IP. Just to explain a little bit about that and not go into it in too much depth. The standard public IP, folks, is not connected to the internet by default. If this was a basic one, then yes, it would be. It's a little bit of a security risk, and in that case, Microsoft are discontinuing that as of September 2025. So that's one to be aware of, all right. It does warn people when they create the basic SKU public IPs that they will need to attach network security group to it. Also, folks, what we've got here is our network security group for our VM, and these are the exact rules that we've got in the network security group diagram, folks. I'm going to add one in. So in this case, if the source was my IP address, folks, we can just select it there. It will automatically find my IP address, it'll just come up there. Okay. If you need to specify a particular IP address, you can put that in and then you can type it in accordingly. Also, you can pick a service tag, folks, and in this case, it will give you a number of service tags for resources that you can allow an inbound connection to. In this case, you can select the virtual network, the load balancer, action groups, all the other inbound resources. You've got port ranges, folks. It is good practice just to allow any, because if, for example, we were working off my IP address and connecting from our local machine can use a different port to come in and connect to a virtual machine. So give that any with the little wildcard catch-all star. Okay, destination, folks, you want to be giving it something specific, or you could give it any. It'll go for any destination. So if, for example, we're looking to connect to virtual machine 1, then we might want to be given it the IP address of virtual machine 1, folks. All right, so 10.00.4, and that will only then connect to that virtual machine. But if you wanted to give it all, folks, you can just give this any. But you might want to lock things down and keep it granular and just have more control. You can also go for service tags, folks, again, and it's giving you a list of services then that you can connect to. You can also go for application security groups. It is beyond the scope of the tutorial. It'll allow you to group a number of VMs together for your application. But in this case, folks, all I was doing was connecting to that first virtual machine, and I was giving it that IP address 10.00.4. The service was remote desktop protocol, so it automatically slots in 3389, and we were allowing, folks, okay, or in this case we were denying on this here VM network security group. Just to explain this here, what we've got from the top down, folks, on the left was priority numbers. These priority numbers are read as per the lowest number first. So the lower the number, the higher the priority. All right. We've got names then for these rules in this network security group. And then after that, folks, we've got the nitty-gritty details of the port number and the protocol, the source and destination, IP addresses, or these can also be service tags, you know, or they could be wildcards, any, capture everything. And then at the end, either deny or allow that access, folks. So what we've got here, you might have noticed, is a number of default ones, and the bin at the end here to actually delete these is not allowed. The default security rules, as you can see there, cannot be deleted. They're set in here as per what Microsoft want, because it can prevent configuration errors from happening, folks. So by default, anything in the virtual network can talk to anything else in the virtual network. That's what this first one is saying, source and destination. The next one is any Azure load balancer within the Microsoft Azure Virtual Network can talk to anything else in the virtual network, folks. For example, Azure Kubernetes services or virtual machines, for example. Okay, they're both allow rules. And then there's a deny all, any, deny, folks. So this is denying everything, and in that case, it's good practice. You only allow in, folks, what you want, but first of all, everything's denied. All right. In this case, we might want to go in and put in an allow rule here. In this case, we put in a deny because we want to be granular about what we deny, and that will be the first rule that's matched, and that's my IP address to VM1 in subnet 1. Okay, it's going to be denied when we actually attach this to the network interface card, folks. All right. The outbound rules, as you can see here, folks. So as you can see from the top, allow VNet outbound. So from the virtual network to the virtual network, it's allowing everything in there to talk. So if the virtual network resource connects to something else inside a virtual network with regard to like a virtual machine, then the inbound rule is then allowed outbound, folks. It's a stateful rule. So if it's allowed in, it's allowed out. And that goes for the same as my custom one. So if it's denied or if that's allowed in, then it would be allowed back out. In this case, it's denied, so it's not getting in anyway. Okay. The next one is allow internet outbound. So that's anything out to the internet, folks. All right. The next one is again, deny all. Yep. So we really want to make these rules a higher priority by giving them low numbers and just get them a little bit more granular. So if we speak about the subnet network security rule, folks, we have got the allow. The first one is, again, my IP address. In this case, it's going to be talking to the subnet CIDR range in this case, folks. So anything in that subnet one will be able to be connected from my IP address as long as it's got a public IP, folks. So only VM1 in this case. All right. The other VMs are in different subnets, but if there was more VMs in this subnet 1 and they had no public IP, they would not be able to be connected to. It would only be this VM with the public IP address, folks, like we spoke about before. VM1 public IP, which is this one here, folks. Okay, that one. And that's attached to the network interface on VM1 here, like we spoke about. When we do attach it, you can see it's on VM1 here. What we can do now, folks, is if we come to VM1, click in here, and we drop this here down and click on connect, and download this remote desktop protocol RDP file, folks. Yeah, that will then appear as an icon inside our downloads folder. So if I double click on the little icon that's been downloaded, folks, so if I pull that in, folks, there's the VM1 RDP file. We just double click on that. We then get a box that pops up, and what it's going to do is try to connect to that virtual machine 1, folks. So you can see that it's going through here and trying to connect, but we don't have any network security groups attached to either the subnet or virtual machine 1, and in this case we're not allowed to connect. All right, so if I go back to this drawing, I've got it in draw.io here, folks, and if we connect to subnet 1, this network security group on the left here, you're going to see that it has allow my IP address inbound on port 3389, and it's the RDP connection, folks, to the destination, which is the subnet here, 10.0.0.0, okay, /24, and that's an allow rule. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and actually configure that in the portal. We close this down again. We'll come back to our subnets, in this case subnet 1. Okay, if we click on it there, come down, network security group, subnet network security group, folks, click on that and click on save. You might have to give it a little bit of a soak period for that rule just to sink in and be activated, so we can try connecting again. You should get the option here to put in your virtual machine password, folks. If you don't, like I said, just give it a soak period to allow it time. There we go. So we can stick our password in for the virtual machine when we first created it, folks, and hit enter, and we have access to this virtual machine, folks. So from within virtual machine 1, folks, I should be able to talk to either virtual machine 2 or virtual machine 3 because they're both inside that virtual network, folks, as per what the rules were inside the security group, if you remember. So inside this subnet network security group, folks, we are able to connect to the other virtual machines because of the second rule here. The first one has already been used to connect to virtual machine 1, so that's not the rule that we're trying to use to get to 2 or 3. It will be through the next one that's on the priority list, which is allow anything in the virtual network to talk to anything in the virtual network. For example, those virtual machines, folks. So it will jump to that next rule. And just as a point to note, folks, whenever a rule is satisfied, neither of any of the other rules will be read. So once the first one's satisfied, it ignores the rules thereafter. So that's why it's important that you get the priority correct for your configuration to work. Okay, so if I just come back and if I just pull in where that network security group is attached to, again, folks, it's on that subnet there. Okay, at the subnet level at the moment. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect to, for example, subnet 3 virtual machine. If we go in there, it's 10.0.2.4, and I've already got it put in. So if I hit connect, it's asking me for the password, which is a good sign. And I am now connected to virtual machine 3, folks, in subnet 3, 10.0.2.4. Okay, we bring that diagram up again, 10.0.2.4. So I'm connecting there from virtual machine 1. Okay, and you can see there's no other network security groups attached to either of these subnets or virtual machines. It's because I'm inside this private network, folks, and that second rule there, 65000 virtual network source, virtual network destination. That's everything within inside this virtual network, folks. Okay. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to attach network security group VM to the VM1, folks, and I can show you how we can prevent access to that virtual machine, even though the subnet network security group allows that in. Okay, they're red in that priority. As the flow of traffic comes in, it'll hit the subnet one first, then it'll hit the VM one next. Okay, and just on the reverse cycle, folks, for anything that's going back out, the subnet one must also allow the same rules. So if I was allowed into the virtual machine utilizing the virtual machine network security group, folks, and then I was preventing access on the subnet network security group on the way back out, then even though the virtual machine one would allow that, it would be stopped by the subnet one, folks. So they work in unison, and you can see how it could get complicated if you're trying to control the network security groups via the virtual machines. Like I said earlier, it's better to be controlled via the subnet network security groups, folks, so it can be managed at the higher level, and you're not having to apply individual network security groups to virtual machines. Okay, so let's go through that and just show that happening. All right, so I'll pull this back out again. I will close down the connection to virtual machine 3. And what I'll do is I'll close down the connection to virtual machine 1. And just as a point to note, folks, we will look at the infrastructure again and just show you where the network security group was attached. Subnet 1, you can see subnet network security group there is attached now. So what we're going to see then is this network interface on virtual machine 1 have a network security group attached to here. Okay, so if we go to this network security group, folks, and if we come to network interfaces and we click on associate and we drop a list down here, I can see that this is the network interface here for virtual machine 1. Click OK on that, and that's saved that association. I can see the private IP address of virtual machine 1. If we come back here and refresh this page, there's that network security group attached to that network interface, folks. Okay, so if we now try to RDP into VM1, we should be disallowed, folks. And just prior to doing that, let's show you where this other network security group is now attached to. It's on this virtual machine here, folks. Okay, so let's run a connection to RDP on VM1. Okay, click on that. This will now time out. And there you go, folks. We're not allowed to connect to virtual machine 1 because of that security group attached to that virtual machine. And it's just giving you a couple of fault finding ideas there to follow up with. And we know that is because of the network security group, folks. So you can see how effective they are with controlling the security to your infrastructure. And this is it at a very, very basic level, folks. Okay, but you can see how quickly it could get out of control with the amount of different rules that you have. Okay, and it's better to keep it in a nice tidy architectural diagram again. You could do it a number of ways. This is just one that I created myself, and I like to then take a screenshot of this and put it into a GitHub repository to complement some infrastructure as code. And it's just a nice thing then for other people if they want to go in and have a look at it and have a go at this tutorial themselves, then they're able to do that and follow this. At the moment, this here tutorial is only a ClickOps one, and that's just by going into the portal and ClickOps and all the infrastructure together. What you want to do, folks, is then go in and create this here in infrastructure as code, so you can reproduce the infrastructure. Okay, and it's keeping everything dry. Don't repeat yourself. So if someone else wants to utilize the infrastructure, they can. Okay, they don't have to repeat everything again. I just did that for the benefit of the tutorial and just to show you network security group and how they work, folks, at the subnet level and at the virtual machine level. And in this case, just to show you as well, like these VMs were obviously Windows virtual machines. What I would say that I did find was I tried to keep it as low cost as possible. The virtual machines were a little bit on the small side, and I would have probably needed to have went higher than standard B1s because I ran out of virtual memory, because I tried to chain together RDP from virtual machine 1 into virtual machine 2, then RDP out of virtual machine 2 into virtual machine 3, but they ran out of memory, folks, and I was hitting blockers then. So just be aware of that, folks. Again, it's a bit of trial and error, but I was trying to keep costs down. Okay, so as always, drop any questions in the comments, folks, and as always, I hope this helps you out. I leave it with you and wish you all the best. Take care and good luck.